So moving on from Eddie Murphy's what if moments, we now move on to another exciting story that I know perhaps most people may not have thought of or may not even know about, and that is Madhouse Entertainment film Redline. And Redline actually happens to be an animated movie that broke grounds in terms of 2D animation to a level and a standard that perhaps have never been replicated and would never ever be replicated before. I mean, ever. And this has to do with the 2D animated style that they went for, and not just ordinarily a 2D, but they went in to do a 2D animated film that is full blown animation. And when we talk about full animation, we're talking about how smooth and how fluid of a movement the characters in the animations are. And I'll be honest, I haven't watched this animation yet, but in researching to do this presentation, I went on to look at the trailer for the animation, and I can tell you of a fact, it feels as if it was generated with AI. I mean, I wouldn't say generated with AI, but generated with CGI, and it is that good. Every movement, every car racing is so fluid and so realistic that it feels as if it was shot, live action, and rather rendered into a 2D animation film, and that is animated film, and that is quite exciting. And as a result of that, I'm making it my mission to watch it and potentially see if I can come back and do a review of it, because it is exciting to watch. And I can understand that because I was doing a research from, let's first, before I tell you about the research, a little research I did, let's take a quick look as to an article published in the Fandom Wire that details how groundbreaking this film was in terms of its making, and why potentially it may never ever be replicated. So this article says that director of Madhouse movie with a whopping 100,000 animation frames reveals another movie like that is no longer possible. Studio Madhouse Redline, Studio Madhouse Redline anime movie is one of the cult films within the anime industry, but sadly, something like that can never be recreated. So let's go to the reason why he says it's possibly, very impossible to follow. And it says that why is Redline's animation so hard to follow? So there is a poster, a movie poster of the film. So as mentioned above, Redline used more than 100,000 hand-drawn frames for the animation, and it took 7 years to bring it to life. The animation style was incredibly smooth, and every frame was full of detail. While Koike is actually the director of this particular animation. He says that while Koike would love to work on something just like the Red Line movie once again, he doesn't believe he can, as the intensity required to create something like that would be overwhelming and physically tiring. He stated, I would love to do something like that again, but I don't think I could now. Doing all that drawing and animating with that intensity was hard. I was young then, the whole team was young. It was a miracle that we were able to pull off. What makes Redline's animation so unique is that you can clearly see the intricate designs of the characters and their vehicles, and the way everything moves during the races feels dynamic and exciting. Not only that, considering the current environment of the anime industry, it doesn't feel like any studio or animator would contribute 7 years or 100,000 hand-drawn frames to a single project. And that indeed is the reason why he thinks it is literally not going to be possible to do that now, because the toll it will take on you to get that done is on an unprecedented level that you can never imagine. Perhaps in today's day and age, with the advent of CGI and now AI, maybe that would could be possible. But the key to traditional animation or 2D animation is the fact that the artists or the animators involved have to draw everything from scratch by themselves, and that is what make it 2D or traditional animation. And as a result of that, to make that possible with CGI, that would defeat the purpose. Just as we have what's it called, the Studio Ghibli. I'm blanking out on the name, but Studio Ghibli founder sees using AI as a travesty against the craft itself. And I believe that seeing Koike's commitment to making this possible, I don't think they would want to do a film augmented with AI. They wouldn't do it at all. And it is difficult to express what I mean until you watch the Redline animation film itself, or even just watch the trailer. And the little I can tell you is the fact, not to, with no pun intended, but it puts Fast and Furious films to shame. I mean, this hand-drawn animation is spectacular, and it is as if when you watch the trailer, or when I watched the trailer, it felt as if that they were playing with some lens tricks to make the perspective of the cars in the film feel exaggerated, to the way the certain portions of the film, the physics dynamics in terms of the physics in the film, the wind, the force of the you know the elements within the world having impact on the cars and the people driving the cars. It feels as if it is more or less something made out of or out of a CGI graphics film. But every single effect that was exerted on, I mean, on the characters in the film and how the characters were reacting, the details, every single thing was drawn. Even to this very image that you can see there, every single element was drawn. And to talk about 100,000 frames, listen, when we talk about 100,000 frames, maybe we would assume that it's just a simple frame as it is, but it goes beyond that. We are talking about every frame, you know, so every single frame contributing to the cinematic completion of the film. And not just that, but every frame would be worked on several times to get the colors right, to get the effects right, and making sure that every effect works in perfect synchronicity to make sure that it doesn't jerk. It feels natural to the entire movement process. And for those who may not know much about animation is literally every, maybe I'm going too nerdy here, but let me just go into a little bit, get into the rabbit hole a little bit. But for every movement of a film we watch, every film is actually made up of still images. I know it may be difficult to understand, but for those who do editing, they would understand it better. So every movement or every motion picture that we watch actually consists of several frames. And these frames, when played at a certain rate, let's say 24 frames per second, gives us the illusion of movement. And that makes the things move. And that is what they do. So every single movement we watch in animation is actually drawn or has to be created to give it an illusion of movement. And that is what they were explaining here, that 100,000 frames were drawn together to make this film possible. And the little research I did is that I realized that regardless, this happens to be the animated movies with the highest frame. Maybe it's not reported yet on the internet, so maybe I may not know. Maybe there could be a film with the highest frames possible. But so far, one of the films that I discovered had quite some higher amount of drawings made was let me cross check. yeah, it was a Disney's film. Why am I blanking out now? Pardon me, I'm just missing out on that. But one of Disney's films also had the highest amount of frames drawn. Uh, I don't know, but all of a sudden I missed that particular story. But yeah, so Disney had one of their films having the highest amount of frames drawn. So it is quite interesting, but it is quite difficult to pinpoint. You have the Thief and the Cobbler, which is one of the recently released episode of One Piece, which I mean, but it is not really as much as I can imagine. But I think either Beauty and the Beast or one of them had one of the highest rated in terms of the amount of frames made, and but still none of them can compel or compare itself to what they were able to do with this 100,000 frames, and they spent a total of 7 years to get it done, and this 7 years has to do with the exact production process, not perhaps counting the pre-production process. So it was quite a Herculean task to get that done, and that is quite amazing, an amazing feat they have achieved for this film. And I can understand in this day and age, no studio may be willing to wait to get, wait for a filmmaker to spend 7 years to get these drawings done to make a film. And that is simply impossible. In this day and age, it looks like if you can't speed up to get your work done on time, the studio may even cut their funding for the films and pull the plug. And it is quite a difficult time for artists who like to really, go as traditional as possible. And it's unfortunate that these are the times we find ourselves in. So regardless, it looks like there's nothing we can do about it. But there are still some diehards who are decided to, go as traditional as possible and just, do the best they can. And Studio Ghibli happens to be one of them. And I'm sure Madhouse is also in that particular group who have decided that regardless, they will stick to drawing things as traditional as possible. So yeah, this is quite an amazing feat, and it is perhaps a story or a video or a film that I think everybody should do their best to watch. So let me know what you think. What do you think is the biggest factor making such labor-intensive animation impossible today? Is it cost? Is it time? Or a lack of audience? And a lack of audience is key in this question because at the time this thing was released, unfortunately, not so many people saw it. Not so many people saw it. The other people saw the other commercial films, but this film was one way or the other buried in the host of roster of other films that were made in terms of animation that were made that year. But this film, in terms of how expertly done, it tops them all. So, what do you think? Time, cost, or audience? Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comment section below.